in the future. So literally after this webinar, it should be up in YouTube. So pre-scene case study, I'm sure you've read it a number of times. The most important thing is if you need to get any more information, like I talk about the podcast, and you say, how do I get access to the podcast? Then you need to scan this QR code, or if you're watching this on your mobile phone and you can't scan it, then just type in www.sblguru.com and it leads to the same place. So this has got all the links, the YouTube links, the podcast links, the WhatsApp links. All the links are going to be here for you. So scan that. If you've got your phone, if you're watching on a computer, you can scan that now. If not, just remember the URL, www.sblguru.com. And that's got all the podcast links and the YouTube links, so you can look at all the things later on. So the YouTube channel is, this podcast is free, but if you can help me, it would help me a lot if you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It will help to increase visibility. So that's one thing I ask you to do is just like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's YouTube at sblguru.com. So in terms of the podcast, there are lots of really good points in the podcast that you can use for your revision. It's a totally free service to get that podcast. But if you say, I don't know how to use Porter's Diamond, then there's a podcast on Porter's Diamond. If I don't know how to do an ethics question. So I've just literally yesterday put up a podcast which was relevant to the examination. So the podcast I put up yesterday is going to be super relevant to the exam, and it's about ethical issues in events management and how to solve them. Ethical issues in events management. So if you don't do anything else, make sure you listen to that podcast. Make sure you listen to that podcast, and it will basically take you through things that are super relevant and may well come up in your examination. So we think ethics is going to be on your examination. So that's only, all the podcasts are 10 minutes long. So I would strongly advise you to, at least if you don't listen to any podcast, you listen to the most recent one, and it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcast, it's also on YouTube as well. So if you do nothing else, make sure you listen to the podcast about events management. Okay, so I just do a quick promotion. We're going to be opening this later on today, so it's going to be open for about 24 hours. It's not quite open yet, but it should be open in the next few hours. I've got a double mock course. My double mock course will give you one mock based on the pre-scene case study, one mock based on the pre-scene, and it will be on the practice platform. If you want to do this course, literally you have to do the mock exam on Tuesday or Wednesday this week. You must be capable of doing it on Tuesday or Wednesday, and I'll get it back to you on Thursday or Friday this week. It's going to get detailed marking on feedback. That mock is going to be my best guess as to what comes up on the pre-scene. There's also a second mock, which is going to be based on the pre-scene. So you'll have two full mocks, two 100-mark mocks based on exactly the event management industry and the pre-scene. And then that live session, which is going to be exactly 1 week from today, we will have a live session. In that live session, what we'll do is we will focus on the mock 2 and review mock 2. So if you want to prepare, that's a £200 product, but it might just get you across the line in the exam. Previously, when we had this course, a lot of the questions that came up in the actual exam were similar. So we managed to spot quite a lot of questions. So people said if they did that mock course, they had some preview of some of the questions of similar topics based on the pre-scene. So I've literally I'm marking now for mock 1. I'm marking the mock 1 course for the first batch. There's a second batch. It's about to open up. So if you're interested, again, get in touch, and that URL is there for you. So remember, most of the information in your exam answers will come from the actual day. You should not be spending hours and hours on the pre-scene course. pre-scene material. It's just for background, really. So most people who do the exam, they say around 10%, maybe 15% of their exam will come from pre-scene stuff, but the majority of the exam is going to be in the actual day. So the pre-scene, make sure you're very familiar with the pre-scene in the examination. Make sure you're super familiar with it, and make sure that you have a very clear understanding. If you keep looking at the pre-scene on the day of the exam, it's kind of wasting time. They give you it early. You've kind of got to know everything in there. You must know everything in there on the day of the examination. Okay. Now, the most common question I get asked whenever I do a webinar, and especially if I do a free webinar, the most common question I get asked is, can this topic come up, right? So if you ever ask me, what about this topic, Harman process, strategy matrix, can it come up? The answer is yes, right? So any topic can come up, anything can come up on the exam, and sometimes they ask very small, tiny areas of the syllabus, like entrepreneurship or something like that, which you think, oh, that's not a core topic, it's very fringe, but they can ask anything in the exam. So if you ask me a question, can this topic come up? The answer will be yes. Right? So anything can come in the examination, but we might be pointed towards certain areas, and when we go through this lecture, we'll be pointed towards certain areas in the exam. So when we do the pre-scene case study, you need to know the key features of the industry. What are the key features of that industry? So it'll give you some background. You don't need to do a lot of extra research. You should not be like researching. Most of the information is actually, they tell you what you need to know. And make sure you read that pre-scene quite a few times so that you're familiar with the pre-scene in the examination. Make sure you're familiar with the pre-scene in the exam. So so that is going to be our pre-scene case study. Okay, so we're pretty good on that one. Let me see. Yeah. So pre-scene case study, we should be. Oh dear. I have to screw up something now. Just let me start again. Sorry, my sharing screwed up. Yeah. So yeah, we should be looking at the. Sorry. Oh, I hate this. I hate this. Hang on a minute. Sorry. I will not press that button again. Let me share again. Sorry. I'm really not familiar. Zoom. My whole life is Zoom. Okay, so basically what we're going to look at is making sure we are familiar with the pre-scene case study and read it a number of times in the examination. I want you to read that pre-scene a number of different times in the exam. Okay, so you don't need to do a lot of research. ACCA say avoid speculating on what will come up. We're going to ignore that advice, and we're going to try and speculate on what will come up. On the day of the exam, don't just use the pre-scene. It should be like most of your points are going to come from the post-scene. And you know, if you've got 20 hours to prepare for your exam, don't spend 20 hours on the pre-scene. Spend 20 hours practicing past paper questions. There's lots of free materials in the ACCA Education Hub, or if you've got the money, you can buy the double mock course and get a mock based on the pre-scene. I'm sure you're familiar with the exam now, but for the people who are new, 3-hour exam. Exhibits are normally four on the day of the exam. 3 tasks. The tasks are broken into 2 parts usually. Professional mark skills are 20%. Each test for each area has got its own response area. So you do task 1, it will have its own separate word processing area. Okay. A lot of people neglect professional marks, but they are 20% of the examination. So don't neglect your professional marks. So I'm going to bring you now into the pre-scene. I'm going to bring you into the pre-scene. So I'm going to minimize this screen. Okay. So as you go through, Gillian Sinclair says, where can we get a mock based on the pre-scene? Sorry, you mentioned it. If you mentioned it already. So, yeah, so there's thank you, Gillian, for your question. There is a course called a double mock course, which is I literally have just spent 2 days writing 2 mock examinations based on the pre-scene. If you go to www.sblguru, I'll just type it in here. You can find out the information about that pre-scene course, Julian. Yeah, you can find out information about that pre-scene course. So you really like it will open. We've sold out batch 1. Batch 2 will open in a few hours. It should be open today. I've asked them to open today, and it will close on Sunday. You must register and you must be able to sit the mock exam on Tuesday or Wednesday. So all the details there. So let's go through this pre-scene case study. So this is a relatively new business. This is a relatively new organization. It's only been going for 6 years. And the weird thing about this company is that it is a partnership business. It is a partnership. So it's a partnership business. That's not a normal business structure that we see in SBL. Lots of issues in partnerships. Partnership, you've got unlimited liability with a partnership. There's always an issue with capital in a partnership because the capital is, there's only 2 effective people own the company. They share all the profits of the company. So issues with partnerships is conflict. There's sometimes conflict between the partners. If a partner leaves, then the partnership dissolves. So issue you might focus on there is in terms of capital, right? Raising capital. There could be a question about, it seems, I'll talk about it later, but there seems to be an issue with the profits are going down. They may need to invest more. So in a partnership, there's a limited amount of capital that can be put in. So there could be a question in terms of going for a listing of shares as a private, or maybe bringing in a venture capitalist, changing it from a partnership to a limited company, bringing in a venture capitalist maybe to invest in that business, or maybe changing it to a limited company and having other shareholders in the organization. So right now it's a bit like a family business, in that family partnership, in that they're totally in control. There could be a question where they're asking about changing the structure of that business, changing the structure of the organization. Okay, so capital is a big issue for partnerships in terms of bringing in new capital into the organization. There's a variety of events, and they seem to be quite diverse. So each event requires different skills, right? So if you're going to organize a pop concert or a wedding, it's kind of a bit of a different skill set that's going to be required there. So they've got large events like big festivals, but also they've got smaller events like weddings. So you've got 2 types of customer. You've got a corporate customer who's going to spend a lot of money, a big customer, but you've also got a lot of smaller customers. So you've got different customer size, and that could be an issue in terms of where you want to target your business in the future. Now, when you've got an event, the most important thing when you've got in an events management industry is you must keep the client happy. So you will be subject to a number of KPIs, key performance indicators. So just tell me in the group chat, what kind of KPIs would you expect to see in a events management company? Just tell me in the group chat, what type of KPIs would you expect to see in an events management company? Yeah, definitely customer satisfaction, right? So your reputation is everything. Complaints, yeah. Percentage tickets sold, yeah. That's definitely something that the client would be interested in. Yeah. So you've got 2 people to satisfy. You've got to satisfy the customers who are coming to the event, but also you've got to keep the client happy as well in terms of the event management. Yeah, tender success is very good, Emmanuel. Yeah, I like it. Reputation and brand is good. Brand is quite difficult to measure as a KPI, but there can be some sort of independent verification. So you can have a lot of KPIs in the industry that you are going to seek to measure. So measurement and performance measurement could be important for you in the exam. So they're going to have. It seems later on we know that the performance is kind of declining going forward. So there could be some issues there in terms of performance, which we might be asked to address. Tendering whenever I see this idea of tendering for large projects, whenever I see the tendering, it's always, whenever you've got a tender bid, it's always subject to ethical issues, right? So there is, in a tendering process, it's a highly competitive process. The client will take into account financial and non-financial factors in that process. The client's going to take into account non-financial factors. Yeah, profit margins, Rachel, is good. So I'm thinking an ethics, right? Ethics, there's a big section of the SBL syllabus which talks about bribery and fraud and controls in relation to fraud and corruption. So whenever you've got tendering, it's very much in your favor to win the tender at all costs. So there's a scope for production. So make sure you know about your ethical. And I did do a podcast on this. So if you want to listen to the podcast, I did about that. I'll just type in the links to the podcast here. So if you want to listen to a podcast, I did a whole podcast because everything I do for you. There's a podcast about ethics in the event management industry using the ACCA IFAC principles. So please listen to that podcast. That could be very important for you when you're doing your examination. So I think ethics, there's always a lot of tendency for corruption and ethical issues in the tendering process. So if you do win these big contracts, you're going to get a fixed fee. You're going to get a fee which is going to be very lucrative for you in the examination. You're going to get this fee, and that fee is going to be 35 to 40% of event sales, 35 to 40% of event sales. So the fees are relatively high. You're going to make quite a lot of money if you have a successful business, right? If you have a successful business, and this seems to be a growing business. So that's for the big events, like I suppose the concert events. You've got to deliver that concert, but also if you think about events, you are thinking about corporate clients. If you're going to organize a wedding or a conference, it will be a fixed fee. So if a conference, okay, we'll put on a conference for you in the city. We've got a $20,000 budget. So it's a fixed fee for the conference, but the big money is made in the big events like the festivals and those where you're getting 50,000 people to attend a concert. So that is the different types of pricing structure. Now, I'm just like, I always got this thing, when Spider-Man has the spider senses, they said it's they've mentioned the country. I'm just thinking something they haven't asked for a while is Porter's Diamond. So Porter's Diamond, could be a nice question for your examination, and they haven't asked it for quite a while. They've asked it in the past, but it hasn't come for quite a while. The indication that the question is about Porter's Diamond is that the question will say to you, what are the factors in a country? What are the factors in a country that will impact on the businesses in that country? So that you see the word country in a question in the exam, you need to know diamond, right? So Porter's Diamond. So Porter's Diamond, if you don't really know about it, again, I've done a podcast on Porter's Diamond, not related to the events industry, but for you to understand the principle, have a look at the podcast, which is Porter's Diamond about Singapore. International reach, they could be going into overseas markets. So there could be an issue of going into overseas markets, international markets or overseas markets. I see this it's dominated by big players, 4 big players in the market. I'm thinking when they talk about that kind of is telling me you've got a thing about customers already. They're large customers and small customers. It's going to be something about competitive rivalry. Maybe a 5 forces question. A five forces question. Threat of new entrants. You've got a lot of important things, right? You've got good points there. Threat of substitutes. You've got bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of customers. Could be a nice thing. So anytime they ask you in the exam for competitive environment. The competitive environment indicates a question about Porter's 5 forces. So before the exam, make sure you've got some idea about how that might apply in an events management industry. Pestel also pretty much also possible. Like you've got political government licenses for events. You've got economic is going to be a big factor. You've got social factors, social change for you. Social trends are going to be important for you. Technology is important for you. Web, this would make quite a nice Pestel question as well. So something about the environment is very possible in the examination. So in terms of the events in Rodnim, in Holland, although 1960 billion is global, Holland is 108, and I think the fees are going to be there for you. But this company, if you see later on with the numbers, it's quite a small company, quite a small organization. Music concerts, you might need licenses, so that might be like a political, of your Pestel, a political factor. Conferences need good locations for those conferences, so that's like a bargaining power of supplier issue. We've got social events and culture, social, right? Sporting events is a growth area, social, right? The private events are quite flat, but the big growth area here is going to be your virtual events, right? Virtual events in the organization, virtual events. So this is a potential growth area for the organization. The good thing about this one is it's got relatively, once you've got the technology, you don't have the big event costs, which you would have in a conference. If it's online, you don't have to hire the venue. You don't have to have much fewer people. So it should be maybe a lower price, but it's also going to have a lower cost. It could be a nice business area to go into. You're going to need reliable internet though. So if you're going to organize these conferences, you're going to need reliable internet and infrastructure for these conferences, reliable internet and infrastructure for these conferences. So technology, security, IT security, technology is an issue which could be asked in your exam. So the majority of the market is going to be these concerts. That's where the big revenue fee income is in the organization. Virtual events is small but growing. Sports events is small but growing. Private events is flat. So if you're looking for the market, which one do you target? Target the ones basically which have got potential growth going forward. Big corporate clients, in terms, again, if it's going to be a Porter's 5 forces question, bargaining power of customers, you've got big customers, big buyers in the organization. Individual private clients manage private events such as weddings and parties. So this is like smaller power, less power for these type of companies. So corporate clients, if you can get the big corporate clients, that could be very lucrative for your organization because they're big events. They might be using this 40% revenue share, but these people are going to have, getting these people on board, they're going to be very picky in the tender process. And there's these big 4 competitors, big 4 companies in the market. We are a relatively small company. It could be difficult to win those contracts. Okay. But the big thing is, like, I thought about, when I was thinking before they published the pre-scene, I was thinking they've not asked anything about the public sector for a while. Whenever you talk about the public sector and they're talking about working with the government, you always think about your 3 E's, your 3 E's. Can anybody tell me in the group chat, what are the 3 E's? Yeah, it's the economy, efficiency, effectiveness, right? So anytime you get asked a question about public sector, their expectations are going to be for the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. So there could be a question, and when they've asked it before in the examination, when they've asked it before in the exam, they've talked about the difficulties of meeting the public sector requirements. Don't forget, economy is low cost, efficiency is output divided by input, and effectiveness is achieving the goal or target. Okay, so you've got three different types of clients in this type of market. You're expected to be creative and innovative and have a professional level of service. So in terms of fee income, it seems like there's a big chunk. That public sector is a big chunk. So 3 E's is linked to value for money. So you've got to demonstrate good value for money, and the government, whenever the government buys anything, they're accountable. If things go wrong, they can be held to account if things go wrong. So 3 E's: economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. So make sure you know how to do the public sector, problems of public sector, meeting their public sector also may have a lot of paperwork to do, right? A lot of paperwork. It's quite bureaucratic. So economy, efficiency, effectiveness, achieving that value for money criteria. So your margins may be a bit lower. They haven't got a bigger budget to spend. So issues and problems of working with the government. You need to know about that for your exam. That should be something they will ask, and they will give you more information in the post scene. Okay, so one of my questions I've done in the double mock course, I've written a whole question about something to do with public sector. I'm not going to reveal what that is, but there's something going to be in there, right, in the public sector. Annotated PDF, no, that's a paid service, sorry. So, but you will get access to the video on YouTube. Collaboration and cooperation. It seems like there's indicating to me smaller businesses cooperate informally with each other, and this strengthens their bargaining position. So you've got a lot of alliances in the business, right? So alliances, it suggests to me a potential question about benefits and problems. They did ask it quite recently, but it sort of indicating alliance, benefits and problems of a strategic alliance, working or joint venture arrangement, more formal joint venture arrangement. What are the benefits? So make sure you know that, and you can apply that to the events management industry, strategic alliance and joint venture agreements to the event management industry. So a lot of problems there, potential issues. It tells you later on they're not doing that at the moment, but in the post scene, they could indicate that there is a change of mind, right? So issues with the joint venture arrangement. Okay, so they might work with venues, exclusive venues, working together with them by a company, or they might have a joint venture or an alliance with an agency. So you've got to know that sort of classic thing for SBL is there are benefits and problems of joint venture, benefits and issues and problems of using a joint venture arrangement. So make sure you know that for your examination. You've got a whole load of risks here. You've got a whole load of risks. A very popular question for the examiner is they ask you to assess the risks. So there may be more information in the post scene on probabilities and TARA. So they may ask you risk management strategies. Recommend risk management strategies in the organization. Recommend risk management strategies in the business. Recommend those risk management strategies. So TARA, what does it stand for? TARA, what does it stand for? TARA. TARA is not unfreeze. No, Vishal. TARA is not unfreeze. Yeah, so you may be asked, like, how do we manage these risks? Using a risk assessment framework. How do we manage the risks? Right? How do we manage the risk in the organization? How do we manage the risk? So make sure for each of these risks you've got a very clear idea of what the risk management strategy is going to be. They also mention here about the environmental impact, reputation. So it points to me a question about environmental reporting on your non-financial environmental reporting, and that could include integrated reporting as a way to show your environmental impact, carbon footprint of an event. I also talked about that in the podcast as well. So data security is mentioned here, data security legislation, government legislation, data security. Again, could be a nice pastel question. You've got environmental, you've got legal factors in there. So mentioning data security, there is cybersecurity question. How do we protect our systems? Remember when people are booking concerts, they give their name, they give their address, they give their email, name, address, and email. Okay. So credit card. So it's very high risk, high sensitive information. So make sure you've got a very clear idea about how to protect the information held on those servers. You've got a good idea about cybersecurity techniques that the company, events management company, or in the cloud company, they can use to protect these. There's also they mention cybersecurity again. They mention it twice. Whenever I see things mentioned twice, like security, my spider senses start to tingle. So cybersecurity attack. Again, cybersecurity question. Protection. Protecting your systems, tools to protect your systems, to protect your software. Cybersecurity. This is a bit of an issue in terms of technology issues, but also unauthorized selling. So controls, what controls can we put in place? What security controls can we put in place in terms of ticket sales, making sure they don't get sold on the third-party market? We've got a little thing here about technology innovation, and the one that I highlighted there was artificial intelligence can be used to interrogate and analyze data, which is likely to become a feature of future events. It can help them to gain and sustain. Well, straight away, I'm thinking big data question, right? How can we use big data AI to gain a competitive advantage? Now, whenever you talk about big data in the exam, there are 4 elements you need to talk about. Yeah, GDPR, Rachel, is possible. Yeah, so that's going to be a fine. So making sure that's like a risk, right? We've got to take into account. So if we're looking at predictive and prescriptive, there's 2 more elements of big data, predictive, prescriptive. What are the other 2 elements we need to talk about when we talk about big data in the exam? What are the other 2 elements? Yeah, so it's 2 P's and 2 D's, right? 2 P's and 2 D's in the examination, 2 P's and 2 D's. So make sure you understand these 4 tools and think about examples. Again, this is part of your revision phase, right? Think about examples of how they would apply. The exam is not a knowledge-based exam. The exam is not just about description and remembering stuff. It's about applying, application in the exam, application. So make sure you know those 4, but in your revision phase, I will be thinking, well, okay, how can predictive apply in an events management company? How can we have predictive? How can we have prescriptive? How can it apply in an events management company? If you can prepare that in advance, if that question comes up, and also make sure you've got a few AI applications in your pocket. the easiest one you can remember is chatbots, right? Chatbots is always a good one to bring in, but there are other examples that might be suited to events management, so that's something you've got to work on as well. Okay, we've got navigation systems, again, technology, that's innovative technology, reduce the need for signage. QR codes, again, I'm a bit worried about QR codes. Is there a risk of fraud in QR codes? So KPIs are definitely tight financial controls are needed. We need to make sure we make a profit on every event. Cost control. Cost control is a big issue. So there's a big section on the syllabus on finance, budgeting, cost control, which very rarely gets asked, but make sure you know about the cost control features that might be in the exam. We've got to win tenders. If we don't win tenders, we don't have a business. So tender success is very important. Client satisfaction is important for our reputation. And again, he's mentioned environmental again. So that's the third time in the pre-scene they have mentioned environmental. So make sure you know your integrated reporting. The way to remember the 6 capitals for integrated reporting is find my husband in northern Singapore. Find my husband in northern Singapore. FMHINS. What is that? What are the 6 capitals? Can you write them in the group chat, please? Yeah. Find my husband in northern Singapore. Right. So, yeah, I think you're good on that. So, again, the examiner's not just going to want you to write down the 6 capitals in the exam. There will be an application. Application. What are the examples of how it would apply in an events management industry? If you just write down the 6 capitals, you're going to score 0 marks, or maybe one mark. But if you apply it to the case, giving examples for events management issues, then that is going to be very important for you. So how can you evaluate the KPIs? Actual versus target is a way to evaluate your KPIs, right? So again, when you're preparing, it's knowledge but application. Knowledge but application. You've got to know the 6 capitals, but you then have to be able to think of examples, right? If you want to pass SBL, you need to have an example linked to events management in every paragraph. He's mentioned the environment again. The industry body is mentioning environment again. So how many times does he have to mention environment to tell you something about the environment is coming up? So environmental issues, measuring problems. How do we measure it for an event? They've asked in the past how to reduce the environmental impact. Give examples of ways in which you can reduce your environmental impact. Again, I covered it in the podcast a little bit on some of the ways that we can be ethical and minimize our damage to the environment. So listen to the podcast. There's some clues in there for you, but that's just part of it. If we're going to have a big event and a concert, we're going to have we've got to have policies in place about wastage. We've got to have, solar power and all those kind of things. So make sure you've got some ideas. But the most important thing is when you write your answer in the exam, you must give an example for event management example. So in your preparation, as you're going through your final week of preparation for the exam, you need to have event management examples, right? That's the important thing that's going to get you a higher mark, right? So prepare in the context of event management. Prepare your answer in the context of event management. So they deal with the corporate customers and private customers. They are not currently in the public sector. Okay, so Melissa says, will event management be the only industry that comes up? Yep, definitely, right? The event management industry, they're not going to ask about, accounting industry or banking. It will be based on the pre-scene. Can we use real-life examples to support, such as a recent backlash Ticketmaster? Yeah, again, Karen, I talked about it in the podcast. Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, the Oasis ticket scandal was before, but I did mention it was before the exam was written, but it was mentioned in the podcast as well. Again, it could be like an ethical thing. Like, is it ethical to have dynamic pricing? So real-life examples, don't do too many real-life examples, right? Don't do too many. You can maybe mention it in a very limited way, but your example is normally going to be based on Rodnim, right? So you can maybe mention it as one small point, but your whole answer should not be about real-life examples. Your whole answer should be about Rodnim, to Rodnim's management. But very occasionally you can put one in, like this was an issue with a recent Oasis ticketing scandal, caused a lot of bad reputation. This is a risk. But make sure your answer is not too much on real-life companies. Make it about this fictional company. That's how you're going to do it in the exam. But occasional reference is okay. But don't make your whole exam about real-life organizations or real-life companies. They're not currently in the events management. So that's like a big issue. So they're not currently in the public sector. So it says to me, again, big issue. Something about public sector is going to come up in your exam. Definitely something about public sector. They're going to move into the public sector, evaluate the strategy of going to the public sector, performance measurement in the public sector, how will it be measured. There's lots of potential things, the value for money part. Okay, so missing opportunities. I think if you're not in the public sector and it's got like, was it 26% of the revenue, that's a big opportunity lost. Okay. So they are independent. They're not working with any partners at the moment. Again, that could change in the post-scene. Post-scene, oh my goodness, we need to now work with partners. What are the opportunities of working with partners? What are the problems of working in a partnership? So question on working with others could come up. This organizational structure is very messy, right? It's very, very messy. And they're a relatively small organization. They're a relatively small business, a relatively small organization. So that could make it difficult for them to compete with the larger companies. Don't forget the larger companies have got economies of scale in the business. So difficult to compete with those larger companies. Partnership. So there's no non-executive directors, and people, but there's no non-executive. Generally, the purpose of non-executive directors is to keep an eye on the management to make sure that they are acting in the shareholder interest. In this case, there's no real need for non-executive directors to be had in this partnership because the owners are actively involved in the day-to-day running of the business. There's no separation of ownership and control. But what I want to ask you is, what is missing? What roles are missing in this structure? What roles are missing in this structure? What are we missing? Yeah, we've got no legal. Yeah, that could be a big one. HR and IT. Yeah, Amy says HR and IT. Definitely HR. Yeah, we've got no proper like finance director, right? We've got no. Yeah, so it seems like there is a lot of issues here. This structure seems to be like very messy, right? There is a part of your syllabus where they ask you about different structures: functional, divisional, matrix structure. So there may be a possible question. It's a bit of a fringe area of the syllabus where they ask you about reorganizing. How can they reorganize this structure to get better? And it seems like looking at this issue, I'm worried about this Dicker. I've still not worked out if Dicker is a boy's name or a girl's name, but Dicker Nkosi is very, very inexperienced, right? 22 years old, recent graduate. So this person's very inexperienced, but Nika Nkosi has got like massive responsibility, right? Event coordination, event delivery, project management, event risk management, very, very young, super young person. And basically the core role of this organization is on their head, right? So the success of the business is based on this 22-year-old, but whereas Mirza Hosni has got a lot of experience, but is mainly involved in the planning and scheduling. Okay, so in previous exams, they've asked questions where an inexperienced member of staff screws up, right? And they screw up. So normally it's a project management question. The inexperienced members screws up. There's going to be an event that screws up. So look out for that project management stuff for the event. Okay, for the event. It seems like everybody's doing everything, right? There's Amanda is doing budgeting, but there's no real financial director. This guy, Jimmy, is doing everything, right? Financial control. He's also in charge of IT. He's also in charge of data analytics. He's also the HR manager. So it seems like the structure is very messy right now. There's no clear roles. Maybe they would benefit from having a clearer functional structure in the organization. Functional structure. Now, the nature of events management is very seasonal. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't want to hold a big staff. But it seems like very disorganized and not very good. So Leonardo says, do you think something might appear on a specialist, certain types of events since they're not big? Should they follow that path? Yeah. Leonardo, what I say is anything can come. Yeah, so there might be something in the post scene where they specialize in certain types of events. Some kind of creative thing. Definitely could come. But it will be in the post scene. That information will be in the post scene. Yeah, so there seems to be like Jimmy has got, it would benefit, this business would benefit from a reorganization. Okay, it would benefit from a reorganization, definitely, right? So, yeah. So look out for this question where Nika screws up something. This is what it says to me. Whenever they talk about inexperienced managers, especially with all that responsibility, there's going to be an event which screws up in the post scene. Something goes wrong in an event. Again, I've written a question about that on my, I can't say too much, but in my exam. So this is a bit like project management issues. You've got freelance staff. You're going to employ a lot of temporary staff. Temporary staff, they don't work for you full time. In security, hospitality, support, this is like a problem. Difficult to control, quality controls. How do we ensure that we've got good quality of those freelance staff? You remember a big part of your syllabus and a big part of past exam questions is recommend controls. So you may be asked to recommend controls over the temporary staff. This is a bit like a project management thing going on here. Normally what I would expect, and this is based on previous exams, is Dicker does a event and this is not sufficient and it screws up, and recommend changes to this system, and or why did it not screw up, what went wrong and how to fix it. So this is a bit like a project management. I'd advise you to make sure you know about what's in a best practice for project, especially for like things like project initiation document. Project initiation document. So make sure you know what's in a good project. Okay. something dicker, there's a project, it screws up, what went wrong, how to fix it, what changes do we need in this process to fix it. So there's something, again, it'll all be in the post scene. Could be systems failure. Yeah, Karen, it could be systems failure. What controls do we need to bring in? Backup systems, security. There's no note 2. Note 2 is here, right? Note 2 is here. John? Yeah, so private events follow the same process. I'm going to tender. They simply meet the client to discuss. However, as with tendering, if they're not engaged with the client, they do not progress. Okay, I think it's just an error by it. I won't read too much into it, John. I won't read too much into it. Unless they're going to add something in the post scene, but I don't know. So I think this is more like a question, like a project manager type question. Some of the most recent articles from the ACCA SBL article have been about project management. So make sure you know that. This is the information systems they're currently using. They're using project management tools. Don't know how old they are. Things are broken down. Security issues. We've got this event ticketing system. It's based around QR codes. Just worry about fraud, security, making sure you've got data security, people's credit card, again, points to an IT security. Marketing, we don't know much about it. But one thing I would say about question, he likes to ask, how can we improve our e-marketing? How can we make it better? They talk about maybe in the post scene, weaknesses in e-marketing. But don't forget as well, there's a part of the syllabus which they've never asked about, which is the 3 extra P's in a service company. Can you please tell me what are the 3? This is kind of a service organization. Please tell me what are the 3 extra P's in the service organization. What are the 3 extra P's? It's not people, planet, and profit. Process is one. Yeah, Emmanuel, process one. People is one. Process and people. Missing third one. People, process, physical. Right? So marketing in a service business, people, process, physical. So again, when you're preparing for your exam next week, make sure you've got examples. Okay, physical. How would that work in an events management business? Physical. Process. How would the process work in an events management business? People. How do we make sure we've got good people interaction? So make sure when you're doing your research, make sure you've got examples of how we could apply those 3 extra P's in the events management business. Okay, so e-marketing plus the 3 extra P's is possible. People post comments about their experiences. This is a big risk, right? We've got reputation management. If people are completely trashing your event, it's going to be like a big risk. So how do you manage that going forward? Like this, you're going to make sure that you maybe moderate those comments. Their aim, it seems to be like they're a differentiation strategy. They're going to go for top quality service. So quality is kind of their core mission, like they're differentiating on quality, memorable for the client. So they're not like a low-cost provider at all. They're like talking about quality. They want to explore business opportunities, innovative technology. So again, looking at that big data, AI type question, make sure it's in place. Ethical culture, they mentioned ethics twice now in this thing. So ethical culture, ethical dilemma. There could be some ethical dilemma where you have to use your ACCA IFAC principles. Again, I talked about that in the podcast. They mentioned environment. This is about the 5th time they've mentioned environment. So something about environmental integrated reporting applied to the events management industry. So there's a risk register. We've got the risks here. Question may lead to be one on risk management, risk assessment framework, and TARA. Risk management, risk assessment framework, and TARA. So we've got risks. How do we manage risks? So popular question is in the exam is assessment and management of risks. Transfer, avoid, reduce, accept, with examples linked to the industry. With examples. So how do we deal with the strategic risk? Competition. How do we deal with the budgeting? So with events management, there's like an issue with credit, right? Often you're giving credit. There's cash flow problems, bad debts, right? Bad debts. How do we make sure we minimize our bad debts? Cash flow problems is big. Economic factors going to massively impact on your business. If your events, people have fewer events in a recession, that's why the public sector might be a good place to go. Compliance risk, again, what risk management controls do we put in to achieve the compliance risk? Operational risk in the organization, again, controls, recommend how do we manage operational IT system failure? How do we minimize it? What IT controls to secure? So weird thing here, right, in these numbers is that the income is going up, but the profit is going down. So something's going wrong here, right? Income is going up. So if the income's going up, so we got like 745 here. We're now on 780. We've got lots more, like 40 million more in revenue, but the profit has gone down. So there's an issue with cost control. There could be an issue with debt, right? Debt could be an issue, again, which might need to be solved by bringing more capital into the business, which leads you to opening the company into a limited company or limited organization. So there's something going wrong with your costs. I don't think it's lower prices. It could be lower price or cost, but if you look at the next one, it says that 45% of the tenders have been successful. This is a marginal improvement on the performance in 2002. So they're winning the same number of contracts, but maybe they're winning bigger contracts, right? They're taking on bigger contracts, but there's an issue with cost control. So it's not caused by winning more contracts. So it suggests to me that they're taking on slightly bigger contracts, but we've got issues in cost control and management of those contracts. So or maybe they're getting more revenue, but these are the corporate events, the weddings, which have got potentially a lower margin. So they're winning more things, but they're winning more low margin contract like the conference, fixed fee. Yeah, so 86% of contracts were received, were completed. Why not 100%? I don't think it's a massive issue. It's still quite high. Success rate, is that a good success rate for tender success? The more you can win, the more revenue you're going to get. There's been no increase in tenders won, so it suggests that we might need to use big data or AI to help us in the tendering process. So make sure you know about how to use big data AI. And this is a bit of a worry, which is the net promoter score is going down. Fewer people are recommending it. There's some operational problem, which will be in the post scene. Something about dissatisfaction, some bad reputation is going to come, which we've got to try to fix. Again, question would be about controls. What new controls would you recommend to address the client dissatisfaction? But again, there'll be something given to you in the post scene, okay? So that's it. In terms of the pre-scene debrief, I will just go back to this, so in case you missed it earlier. Apparently that double mock is available now. It's only going to be available for 24 hours. So if you can do the If you want to do a pre-scene mock, if you want to do a pre-scene mock on Tuesday, if you want to do a pre-scene mock on Tuesday, you've got to be able to do it on Tuesday or Wednesday. It will probably close in 24 hours. It will be closed. I don't have many spaces left on it. But if you're interested in that, get in touch. If you want to know the podcast link, get in touch. Please don't message me and say, can you give me a free course, right? You know, if you go to this link, there's lots of free stuff, but don't ask for more free stuff. There's a limit to the amount of free stuff. So I often get people going, give me everything for free now, immediately. I want everything for free. There's free stuff, but there's paid stuff. You can't get the paid stuff for free. So just to let you know, right? So I will now answer any questions you have. Thanks, Daniela. Thanks, Rachel. If you've got any questions, you can post in the chat. So I think you might get a link to this. If not, I'm going to put it on YouTube. So it will be on YouTube within the next hour. It will be on YouTube. I think the FME, I think the course is open now. So it wasn't open when I checked, but I think it's now open. Somebody said they just registered. Does the mock only get sent out on Tuesday? So basically, Melissa has got a question. Does the mock... Karen says, thank you for putting this out. I can't do the mock on Tuesday. Will I share the opportunity with my network? Yes, thank you, Karen. Does the mock only... So what happens is the mock will take place on the ACCA practice platform. So you will be sitting the mock on the practice platform. It will open up on Tuesday at 001 UK time and close on Wednesday at 23:59 UK time. So you've got a 48-hour window, to get in touch, 48-hour window to do the mock. And then I will mark it on Thursday or Friday. So you've got a very limited window to do the mock. No, I can't share anything, any questions, because that's a paid service, right? That's a paid service, Secula. So if you pay for the service, you get more stuff and good stuff. I keep back for my customers, for my clients. So I don't share anything for free on the questions. So when is the second mock if the first one's on Tuesday? So on Thursday, I will give you, on Friday, I will give you mock 2, which will be an unmarked mock. And you'll get questions and answers on the, a week today, we're going to debrief that mock 2, and that's an unmarked mock. So you're going to get one marked and one unmarked. The second one will be debriefed in a live session like this one. Again, only for paid clients. The link, hold on, I can maybe share the link. Hold on for a second. So the mock can be attempted, Joshua, at any time in a 48-hour window. So from the 26th at midnight to the 27th at midnight. So you've got 48 hours to complete. Okay.